You poured everything into it, the late nights, the savings, the belief, and then watched it quietly fall apart. Welcome to the club nobody wants to join, but almost every serious entrepreneur has a lifetime membership in. Let's talk about what actually happened, because it wasn't just bad luck, and it wasn't just bad timing. There was a system failure underneath the surface, and once you see it, you can't unsee it. The product made sense in your head, it made sense on paper, and every friend you showed it to said, "This is brilliant," which, by the way, is the single most dangerous sentence in business. Friends are not customers, enthusiasm is not demand, and a great idea without a tested market is just an expensive hobby. Here's the part nobody posts about on LinkedIn. The money didn't disappear all at once. It bled out slowly, drip by drip, through ad spend that didn't convert, inventory that didn't move, and subscriptions to tools you forgot were even running. By the time the numbers told the truth, you had already rationalized yourself into a corner, because conviction without feedback is just stubbornness wearing a blazer. The psychological damage of a failed launch is underrated. You don't just lose money, you lose momentum, identity, and sometimes the respect of people who are watching. One founder described it as grieving a person who never existed. And honestly, that metaphor hits harder than any balance sheet. But here's where history becomes your therapist. Nearly every iconic brand you admire has a graveyard of failed products buried quietly behind it. Apple had the Newton, Coca-Cola had New Coke, and your favorite creator had a course that sold 11 copies and still haunts them at 2 in the morning. Product failures follow a brutally predictable cycle. Overestimate demand, underestimate friction, exhaust runway, then either pivot or quit. The founders who survive aren't smarter. They're just more willing to let the data override their ego. One of the biggest misconceptions people carry out of a failed launch is that the idea itself was the problem, but usually it's the distribution, the timing, or the messaging that killed it, not the core concept. Fixing a go-to-market strategy is infinitely cheaper than starting over from scratch, and most people quit right before that realization lands. So what do you actually do after losing real money on something that didn't work? You do a brutally honest post-mortem. You separate what was controllable from what wasn't, and you resist the urge to immediately launch something new just to psychologically compensate for the loss. The practical lesson here is to never bet the whole stack on a single launch again. You spread the risk, you test small before you scale, and you treat every dollar spent before proof of concept as a tuition payment, not a failure. Position size matters in business the same way it matters in investing. The goal is to stay in the game long enough to be right. Recovery isn't a dramatic comeback moment, it's a quiet recalibration, a smaller bet made smarter, and a system rebuilt with scar tissue instead of optimism alone. The bounce back almost always looks boring from the outside and feels like the hardest thing you've ever done from the inside. At the end of it all, the loss didn't define you. How you processed it, systematized it, and moved forward with discipline rather than desperation is the actual story. Consistency over conviction, process over passion, and sizing over swagger. That's the framework that actually compounds. And here's the philosophical closer that took most people a failed launch to finally believe you were never one product away from success, you were one system away from sustainability. Build the system first, then let the product serve it. Whether you're ready to rebuild, reinvest, or simply redirect that energy into something with more stable returns, the next move matters more than the last one. Check out our links in the description below whether you're looking to get started in real estate investing, need home contracting work, or want help finding the right lenders. We've got you covered.